Draft Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Training Board Order 2025.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
I beg to move that the committee has considered the Draft Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Training Board Order 2025. The draft regulations were laid before the House on the 5th of February this year. It is a pleasure to serve under you as Chair, and I will proceed to continue. The scale and urgency of the skills challenge that I and my noble friend, the Minister for Skills, have been debating with members in this and the other place over recent weeks is clear. What is clear is that the solution lies not just with one government, but in working in partnership with everyone who can scale up the necessary skilled workforce to deliver the growth, opportunity and homes needed by all. The Construction Industry Training Board, more usually referred to as a CITB, is one of these essential partners. I say essential because the recently published independent review of both remaining industry training boards conducted by Mark Farmer reinforced the necessity for the levy-funded model of construction skills provision to continue. The levy remains important for an industry that is fragmented, characterised by high levels of self-employment, contracting and project work, which often acts as a disincentive for employers to train and develop the workforce. But the focus here today is to discuss legislation that, if supported, will generate almost £224 million in 2025 to 26. Ring-fenced for construction training, supported an estimated 67,000 accessible employers. Established in 1964 with a remit across England, Scotland and Wales, today I see a version of the CITB that is energised by our ambition to build 1.5 million homes, provide up to 5 million home upgrades and provide a skills system that provides opportunity for all. I now turn to the details of the draft order. My thanks to the Joint Committee on Statutory Instruments for its detailed review. Little has been amended in the one-year order from the previous 2022 to 23-year order. Levy assessment rates, which were heavily consulted on, remain the same. For companies that directly employ workers, they will continue to pay 0.35% of those employee earnings. It is right that companies who contract workers and do so not bear associated staffing costs pay a greater share towards the pool of trained individuals. Their levy rate remains at 1.25% of the contract payments paid to indirectly employed workers. What has changed are the thresholds that exempt or give a 50% reduction in levy fees to smaller organisations employing fewer people. These increases in exemptions and reduction thresholds are designed to avoid penalising companies who have had increased staff wages since the previous order in 2022. Now, employees with an annual wage below $135,000 are exempt from paying any levy at all. The CITB estimates this is a 69% of in-scope employers. A further 15% of employers will be eligible to pay just half of their levy rate. This applies to companies with a wage bill between $135k and $449,999k. I think I've got that right, that's under 500,000. A further 15% of employers will be eligible to pay just half of their levy rate, as I've said, and this applies to companies within that wage. A laudable feature of the CITB levy is that exempt employers or those who pay reduced levy rates are still eligible to claim full CITB support. The few larger construction companies support the many sole traders and SMEs that make up the majority of the sector. Put it simply, Madam Chair, 84% of the scope employees are either exempt from paying the levy or will pay just half of the levy, but they can still benefit from the full training support available. I know members will be keen to understand how those in scope of these payments feel about this additional levy the law puts upon them. Last year's general election caused a delay in publication of the much anticipated Mark Farmer review I referred to before. the CITB felt it was unreasonable to complete its usual engagement with the industry through its in-depth and lengthy consensus process, while the outcome of the review was still unknown. Instead, the CITB sought views on the one-year proposal from its 14 prescribed organisations, sector federations representing around 30% of all levy-paying employees, and the national councils for England, Scotland and indeed Wales. The vast majority were supportive, and neither CITB nor my department has encountered opposition since that targeted engagement. With the ITB's review and the CITB's strategic plan now published, industry is in a much stronger position to enter consensus for the 2026 proposals and make informed decisions.
In the preamble to the statutory instrument, it mentions that the government have consulted with Scottish ministers. Could you confirm whether the Scottish government were supportive of these proposals, or whether they brought forward any contrary suggestions?
Minister.
Thank Honourable Member for his friend. I can confirm that both the Scottish Government and the Welsh Government were both consulted and neither objected. To conclude, this order will enable the CITB to continue raising extra revenue from those in the construction sector who benefit most from its growth. This will be reinvested into our skills construction workforce to support this sector to build Britain's future. Thank you.
The question is that the committee has considered Draft Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Training Board Order 2025. I now call upon the Shadow Minister to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Ali Khan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Now, the SI that we have in front of us is effectively kicking the can down the road for a year while the government comes to a decision on the future of the CITB. That's obviously not ideal from the point of view of the sector, but I can see that it gives the government some time to think and make a decision. And on our side, we'd really like to thank Mark Farmer for his thorough and very frank review and his analysis of the big challenges facing the sector in building a proper skills pipeline. His recommendations were very clear, that at CITB needed a, quote, fundamental reset and merging the two remaining ITBs into a single workforce planning and development body for both construction and engineering, supported by a statutory levy. Now, the DFE have already said in response that they won't merge the two ITBs. But I do have some questions that I'm keen to get answers from today, and although I appreciate that in these short sessions it can be difficult for ministers to answer everything, I'd be very grateful if the minister could undertake to write on some of these issues if there's no time to answer today. The first question was really that in their briefing for this debate, the CITB explained that 143 million, or over 12% of all the funds raised from the levy over the lifetime of this Parliament, will be spent on, quotes, running the business, including the grant and levy administration. So that equates to about 28 million a year. Does the minister think that that kind of share, 12%, 1 in 8 pounds, ongoing on administration is appropriate? And if not, what sort of percentage would be? The second question is really about the government's emerging thinking on the CITB. The Farmer Review noted that the CITB had delivered useful training, but, and I quote, it is not delivering the level of strategic forward-thinking, scale and pace of influence or tangible bottom-line impact that the industry now requires. And specifically, it said it had too little focus on upskilling the existing workforce, didn't police how levy funds were used well enough, and then it needed a clearer, modular, unitised system of qualifications. So I wondered if the Minister could say anything about what her emerging thinking is on the future of the CITB. A third question is to do with the growth and skills levy. So the government has said that it will allow employers to take funds out of what's currently the apprenticeship levy and allow them to spend them on things that are not apprenticeships, and the Secretary of State has talked about 50% of the funds for that recently. But other things equal, of course, if you take quite a lot of money out of apprenticeships, then you will end up with fewer apprenticeships. So I wondered what impact the government, what the government's assessment was of the impact in construction, for example, of allowing employers to take 50% out of their levy funds and spend them on non-apprenticeships. What will that do to the number of apprenticeship starts? What will it do to participation in apprenticeships as well? Because, of course, there is an overlap here between the apprenticeship levy and the CITB levy for firms in this industry. if, for example, it does turn out to be a 50% that employers are allowed to take out, what would that do to the number of apprenticeships in construction? Not least because they are identified as a key route into the sector by the CITB themselves. And on that note, as a fourth question, what assessment has the Minister made of the joint appeal, extraordinary joint appeal by the Royal Town Planning Institute, the Royal Institute of British Architects, the Chartered Institute of Building and the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors for Level 7 apprenticeships in the built environment to be exempt from the government's plans to cut Level 7 apprenticeships? Those organisations say they are, and I quote, deeply concerned by the government's plans and that cutting Level 7 apprenticeships in this sector will be bad for upskilling existing workers and will in particular be bad for access to the profession among less well-off people. So will the Minister heed those warnings in this example of a sector that is very worried about the government's plans on Level 7 and protect construction L7 apprenticeships from the planned cull so that more people who are less well off could get top-level jobs in these very, very important professions? I hope the Minister can answer some of these questions today, but if not, I hope that she will write to tell us what the numbers are on these different questions. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I thank the Shadow Minister for his questions and his contribution, and also to say I will endeavour to answer the 4 questions he has raised, and just as he suggested, if there's any areas in which I have not been able to answer, I welcome him to write to me on it, or indeed I can also write to him on this. This mission-led government is kick-starting economic growth, delivering on net zero commitments and breaking down barriers to opportunities. With a growth mission, the government has committed to building 1.5 million homes in England this Parliament, delivering the biggest boost to social and affordable housing in a generation. I will refer to first the Mark Farmer review that took place. As the Shadow Minister is aware, that in 2023 Mark Farmer was commissioned to carry out an independent review of the remaining 2 industry training boards, the Engineering Construction ITB and the Construction ITB, and this was part of the standard cycle of Cabinet Office reviews of the public bodies. Publication of the review was delayed, as I've already said, until the 30th of January this year by a lengthy fact-checking process and the general election requiring us to consider the response against our missions. A headline finding was that the construction, engineering construction sectors face common strategic workforce challenges, and the review recommendation that ITBs be merged to focus on improving workforce resiliency across both sectors. As we press ahead with delivering our 1.5 million homes, now would be the wrong time to distract the construction sector by consulting on changes to legislation. What the sector needs now is continued and more investment in skills and training to create a larger and more effective workforce. We are driving this through increased voluntary collaboration between ITBs, initially focused on the commonality of purpose around infrastructure, as demonstrated by the recent signing of the Skills Charter by both the ITBs and the Sizewell C. There is no immediate plan to legislate to merge the ITBs. Now, the CITB's levy is specific to construction industry. It has a wider remit in terms of the types of training that can be funded, such as providing grants to deliver existing staff to meet any construction-related training needs, as well as being used to set sector occupational standards to assure the quality of qualifications. The CITB has also used its levy funding to address barriers specific to the construction industry, including the creation of a new entrance support team, NEST. This supports mainly smaller businesses to identify appropriate training and provides mentoring and other support for learners. In less than a year, NEST has supported 2,506 distinct employers and 5,213 apprentices. Of those apprentices, 96.6% remain on their training or have achieved their apprenticeships. This is an excellent result. The ITBs are working with the Department of Education as the growth and skills offer to further define to ensure ITB level funded training is complementary to that provision. As I've already said, there are no immediate plans to legislate to merge the ITBs. I'd like to comment on the CITB's running costs, which are currently at 15%, which for the CITB includes the cost of administering the levy, grants and funding schemes out to employers. The CITB's underlying corporate costs, including HR, finance and other back staff services, is 10%. The 2023 ITB review outlines that there should be more transparency around the funding costs of the ITBs. Their corporate service costs should be benchmarked against suitable comparators, and specifically that both ITBs should be looking to make 5% efficiency savings. In 2023-24, the CITB made efficiency savings of indeed 11.3%. The government agrees with this recommendation, and a steering group will be convened to monitor the implementation of the agreed review recommendations. The Department of Education's response to the ITB review is on the government website, and we've accepted the majority of the review's recommendations. When the department has partiality accepted in principle the recommendations, it is because they are complex, are likely to require additional scoping of form and function, in some cases consultation with the industry. We must see a step change in construction skills delivery to achieve many of the government's infrastructure and housing ambitions. Over the next 12 months, we'll be working with ITBs and other government departments through a cross-departmental steering group to scope the different ways of implementing the more complex recommendations. All of this will need to be carried out before final policy decisions can be made on whether to fully accept and implement the recommendations. On the other financial points he has mentioned, I'm happy to write to him on those. This piece of legislation is designed to enable the CITB to concentrate on its job at hand, turning the dial on the provision of a growing and skilled construction workforce, alongside everything this government and industry will also bring to the table. The CITB levy ensures the construction industry invests in training and skills. It provides businesses of all sizes with access to ring-fence funding, estimated to be almost 224 million over the next financial year. The honourable members will know that this is an investment we cannot afford to turn down, given our ambitions for growth to build 1.5 million homes in this Parliament.
Will she give way just before she sits down?
Okay,
I think yes, this is already covered, but is she happy to write to me on this issue about the level 7 apprenticeships?
Oh, thank you for raising that again. I did have that in my notes. In terms of the level 7 apprenticeships, further information will be coming out on that shortly, and that will be made available to the House.
The question is that the committee has considered draft Industrial Training Levy Construction Industry Training Board Order 2025. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order.